Okay, so I'll take you to another setting after you've been speaking about the immigrants and you've been speaking about the context in Italy. Well, today my presentation is to speak about a group of people that they are called Palestinian. And I want to speak about not an urban suffering, we want to speak about this collective suffering. This collective suffering began with the Palestinian people's story in 1948 till the present. There has been lots of events the Palestinian people are living that cause them to be suffering, cause them not to live a normal life. And yesterday in one of the presentations, they were speaking about these minorities in Europe, the immigrants. And you were saying that they are, there's a way of eliminating them, not seeing them, not feeling that they are visible as if they are not existing. And this is the same what has been done to the Palestinian. As if they should be eliminated, there were lots of arbitrary procedures to eliminate them, to take them out of the map, not to be existed. And these procedures were done by several discriminative political procedures, like the wall, the checkpoints, the humiliation in the daily life, the invasion, which caused always, for every Palestinian, feeling no sense of control at all in their day-to-day life and not expecting what were going to happen. If I'm going to travel, yes, like on Sunday I was traveling in the airport, I didn't know, really, I will travel or not travel, maybe there will be something, security check, they will tell me, you go back, I go back. So this feeling of there's no sense of control, there's a sense of humiliation. And even when you look at the like the foreign media, I mean, only the foreign media will show you when there will be clashes, throwing stones, or there will be war, like what happened in Gaza in 2008, 2009. But they would not show you what is the daily life. And this is the daily life which is impacting the Palestinians a lot in what's happening in their life when they go to work, when they go to school, when they want to travel, when they want to get a permit to travel from one place to another. Like my husband, for example, he's from West Bank, I'm from Jerusalem. He cannot drive. He needs a special permit to be living with me in Jerusalem. And he cannot drive in Jerusalem, even though he is a Palestinian. And there will be an Israeli Russian immigrant who just arrived 1 year ago. He will have all the rights to live there as a resident. Actually, we are not called like resident people. We don't have the civil rights of residents, even in Jerusalem. We only have an ID that says that we are an Arabs, and as if we are visitors who could be eliminated any day or in any political decision that we should be thrown out, will be thrown out. So several things happened in the Palestinian history, and I'm not going to go through it a lot. I just want to show you, for example, this is a photo of the separation wall between Ramallah and Jerusalem, and you could see the house is surrounded by the wall. So you can open your window in the morning and you could see the wall in front of you. And also, this is a photo of the checkpoint, which is like a normal procedure between each town within the West Bank. So the checkpoints are not only on the borders between West Bank and Israel. It's within each town there is a checkpoint and the different procedures. So do the Palestinians, with all these impacts and these problems, these wars, and all these arbitrary procedures, are the Palestinians sick people? I mean, do they all traumatize? Are they having all the PTSD symptoms? Are we all need help and intervention from different people, from mental health professionals? Of course, this question, when you want to answer it, it depends from which perspective you're coming from. And if we are coming from the perspective of international humanitarian organizations who were trying to help the Palestinian in a good intentions, but unfortunately they have been medicalizing what's happening in the Palestinian experience of collective suffering. There was a very focused implementation and interventions on individuals. There were very focused approaches, such as debriefing. I remember I was a psychologist in a local non-governmental organization in 2002 when there was a big invasion and incursion on West Bank when Yasser Arafat was still alive in his compound in Ramallah. And we had all these psychiatrists and American psychologists coming to teach us how to deal with this trauma, what's happening. And it was debriefing that you have when somebody, his house is demolished, you go there and you speak with the family. How do you feel? What do you want to do? Can you tell me what's the story? What happened with you? And it went on like this. Each was going to each house, knocking on the door of the people and asking after the demolition of the house, like in 1 or 2 days, how do you feel? I mean, and of course, how do you feel? And then they started to write studies and surveys, post-traumatic disorders, 25% of children have emotional and behavioral problems. Well, I mean, if you go to a house with children and their house was attacked by Israeli military and soldiers, how the children will feel. I mean, 25% of them, they will feel fear and sadness, and they will have bedwetting, they will have nightmares. Because, I mean, it is a normal behavior, or maybe if they're superheroes, they wouldn't have these symptoms. Other approaches also, beside debriefing, I remember in the last war on Gaza, 2008-2009, there was a study just immediately after the war, after the 22 days of closure and intensive attacks on the Gazans. Somebody went and did a study, and they came up with a result that 70% of the Gazans are depressed. So, another also, some of the studies that has been done, also practicing post-conflict psychiatry. So post-conflict, it's in a situation when you have a conflict, it finishes, then you do the studies, you do PTSD, and you can conclude and analyze what happened in this community. But in our case, I mean, it's a continuous conflict. It's a continuous trauma. It's a chronic trauma, actually. We cannot call it even PTSD, because it's a continuous in our daily life. And it's something that people observe and live day by day in the streets, in their schools, in their work. But saying all of this, and I just wanted to say one comment, actually. I'm part of a group, it's called Mental Health Psychosocial Reference Group. And back to this issue of what do we do? I mean, how we can help these people that are suffering. We need to help them and to give them, provide them with interventions and approaches from another world. Like the Egyptian revolution that started in January. So there was a circulation of emails of this mental health psychosocial group. What we're going to do, how we're going to help the Egyptian people. We need to intervene. We need to go and intervene and do psychosocial interventions. And I mean, I tried to stop myself not responding, but I was, you know, I could not. What we want to do, I mean, this is the first time in 40 years the Egyptians, they went to the street in the most democratic and peaceful revolution ever saw, and they have broke the silence, and they had get rid of a dictatorship who was living there for 40 years. So what do we need to do? I mean, they have done much better than us. So the Palestinians are traumatized, or do they need our intervention? For sure, some people, they need intervention, and they need help. But I wanted also today to present a concept, and I was trying actually to find a description of this, and a definition of this concept, which is called sumud. Sumud is an Arabic word, and the only literal meaning that I can find in English is steadfast. And I was trying to search, what does it mean, steadfast? I mean, and so I checked in the Oxford Dictionary, in Cambridge Dictionary, they were saying steadfast, staying firm, and staying firm and wavering, standing firm. But I mean, does it really give the essence of this word, of this concept? It's also, I checked again with resilience, because I thought that this is the most, related definition it could be, or the most related concept that could be related to Sumud. And even also in the research of resilience concept had started, the studies on resilience started when they were studying in the 70s the children of schizophrenic mothers. And it was much more concentrated on how coping strategies, how to adapt, developmental strategies of the children when dealing with the adversity situation. And it was also like a competence under stress, or it's a coping strategy. But I go up again and say that, is it really, I mean, this is resilience. I mean, this is what we're talking about. This is the concept that we're talking about, what the Palestinians are living. I also checked the American Psychological Association, and they were saying, suggesting 10 ways how to be resilient. And I was thinking, do this also work with the Palestinian concept? Does it mean what I'm saying is sumud, the steadfast? And they were like, it struck me these 2 points: to avoid seeing crisis or stress events. I mean, how anybody in a conflict and be resilient would not see stress events, or to accept circumstances that cannot be changed. And this is actually the value of most of the Western approaches that came to interfere in Palestine, dealing with trauma, that you have to accept the circumstances that cannot be changed. But I mean, this is what we want as interventions in this community. For example, if an American psychologist will come and say how he will think of an adolescent who's going to throw stones, is he a resilient person, or he's showing violent behaviors? So it depends on the perspective. If we go back to the Palestinian perspective, a boy, or let's say adolescent, we don't want to say boy, who's involved in the first intifada, who's involved in the second intifada, is a hero, is a freedom fighter. For the Palestinians, for us, somebody who is involved in the conflict is not a person who is a delinquent or a juvenile, or he has a problem. He's somebody who could show the concept of sumud, the steadfast. He shows his belonging, his identity, his beliefs, the solidarity with the whole community, that he is participating in this collective suffering. So it's not about the individual suffering, it's much more about the collective suffering. And all these values and concepts the community give the Palestinian individual, and feeling together as one part, one community, one strong community with several values that help them to continue their struggle.